There we go. All right. So we'll give people a couple of seconds before we do introductions and everything. So hope you're sitting comfortably. Guys, welcome. Welcome to Take a Deep Breath. Just give us a minute or two just to get everybody set up. If you are watching this and you can give me a thumbs up in the comments to let me know that you can hear me and you can see me, that would be really wonderful. And I'll be doing introductions very, very soon. So get comfortable. Hope you've got a nice cup of something with you, and just another 10 or 20 seconds and we'll get going. I'm still quite new to this live malarkey. Right. Okay, it looks like we're all good. So I'll kick off. So good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're watching this live. And if you're watching this later, hello, I'm glad you found us. My name is Mike Mayer. I run Take a Deep Breath. We are a breathwork enthusiasm channel. So we have over 100 videos dedicated to different breathing exercises. And we also have Breathcast, and this is a live breathcast. And what is a breathcast? It's a dedicated breathwork expert Q&A generally, or just a wonderful conversation about breathing. And we've got a lovely back catalogue of guests. And I'm so excited today. We've got Dr. Brown with us, and he's going to be talking to us about coherent breathing. And I just want to do a little bit of an introduction for Dr. Brown. So some of you might have heard of coherent breathing. I don't want to spoil that. But Dr. Brown, Dr. Richard P. Brown is an associate professor of clinical psychiatry at Columbia University, College of Physicians and Surgeons, where you obtained your medical degree in 1977. Dr. Brown developed a comprehensive neuropsychological theory of the effects of yoga, breathing on the mind and body, particularly its benefits in anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. You focus on meditation. You've developed Breath, Body, Mind, and there is the website www.breath-body-mind.com. The link is in the description below. I highly recommend you click that link and you go to the website. And today we're going to be talking about the power of coherent breathing with Dr. Brown. So this is a really, really special episode. If you've looked at some of the breathing exercises that are on right now, we've got nothing to do with coherent breathing, and it's still a fairly new term to me. So this is so exciting. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Brown. So Dr. Brown, good morning, good afternoon. Where are you? In the US, so it's probably morning for you, I'm guessing.
It's afternoon. I'm on the East Coast right now.
Wonderful. Oh, I got it right when I was planning, because I guessed East Coast. So before we get stuck in, how are you feeling today? How are you doing?
Great.
Yeah,
great.
Fantastic.
It's great to be with you all.
Yeah, and guys and gals and people, please make sure that you pop your questions in the live Q&A box, because as we run through the next 60 minutes, if you've got anything that you want to ask Dr. Brown, pop it in there and I'll do my best to fish those out and get those questions. This is just really a breath conversation. So Dr. Brown, if we can maybe start at the beginning, and if I can ask you a bit about, when did you first discover breath work? When did you first get involved with it?
Well, I began doing yoga when I was 9 years old. And then I began doing Japanese martial arts when I was 12 years old. And there was some breath work, not a lot. Yoga at that time, many years ago, it would be very rare that you would do much pranayama or breathing. And understand, different cultures have used breathing for thousands of years. It's often associated with India or South Asia, but many cultures around the world use breathing. And it's really interesting trying to learn about that. I began to do it because my teachers felt that breath was an important component, along with mind and body techniques for training. It became much more important years later. In about 1986, basically, I began doing my third Japanese martial art with a famous, at least in Japan, Aikido master, who's been in New York for many years. And breathing and meditation are very important from his perspective, although I'd say he knew that Americans often didn't think it was that important. So we would usually start every class with 5 minutes of what we're calling coherent breathing. what many people in America are now calling coherent breathing. But at that time, I didn't appreciate it so much because if you just do it for 5 minutes, you may not feel anything. And it was only as time went on that I kept getting, let's say the universe kept exposing me to it. And I began to think, maybe there's something more to this. So what we were calling coherent breathing is for the person of average height, that is less than 6 foot, it means breathing around 5 breaths per minute, 5 or 6 breaths per minute. And it's equal inhale, equal exhale, not forceful. You could be doing many other kinds of activities, and no one would know you were doing it. I began doing Qigong and several styles of Qigong in the mid 80s, and then in the 90s, and then later in the 2000s with different systems and different masters. The first one I started with was so complex, and coherent breathing, which they called natural breathing, even though it often feels unnatural to stressed human beings, they considered it the most crucial thing to start training with and to learn to do it for 20 minutes at a time. But there were many, and with that, you could then learn much more advanced practices very quickly. But it was almost too much for me. I didn't have the background to appreciate it. And it was only after training with some other masters and coming back to it that I began to understand it. Around 2002, I was contacted by people from a worldwide yoga foundation who teach breathing around the world, because a master in India was teaching very advanced techniques of breathing to large groups of beginners. And they asked me to join them to do a symposium at the United Nations for approaches for more affordable healing of the worldwide epidemic of stress, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was before COVID and climate disasters and the other things that have occurred in the meantime. One of the teachers I trained with, who was quite a master of ancient Chinese and translated ancient Chinese texts, taught me that in the old texts, what they said was people come with an imbalance of their stress response system being too active and their recharging, healing, social bonding system. These are parts of the autonomic nervous system. That healing part was much too deficient for most people who came for help. And I'm sure the ancient yoga masters understood the same thing. So you would start with slow breathing when you got to do breathing, and you might do that for years, and you might learn very slow breathing. And then you would go to doing fast breathing, and that might take 10 or 20 years. And then the masters would do breathing like coherent breathing. And it was described in an ancient 3,000-year-old Chinese Buddhist medical text as the breathing for longevity. I haven't met many people who don't want to live longer and be healthier when they're living longer. And they described this breathing quite accurately 3,000 years ago. But all these different kinds of breathing were primarily taught in religious traditions and maintained, although they were also used for warriors, to train warriors to be more resilient, more aware, and to survive better. And of course, in China, some of the warriors were also monks doing spiritual practices, partly for martial arts, but also for healing as well. So I began doing this yoga around 2002 and quickly became an instructor because I had instructed in martial arts and other things, and it fit really well for me. But I found, although some of the more advanced breathing was wonderful for me, some people would get anxiety or flashbacks or other issues happening, such as sometimes triggering manic episodes. And I felt that as a doctor, I needed to teach a breathing that would have the most benefit in the shortest time, since I found teaching in many countries around the world, whether after a disaster or just for regular people, that most people would only do about 15 or 20 minutes a day of that kind of practice a day. And so we wanted things that would help people function at their best and not have to spend so much time. So my now in his 80s Japanese Aikido master spends 3 hours every morning doing breathing and meditation. And then later in the day, he's doing physical practice and teaching or doing martial arts. And Aikido involves not just hand-to-hand combat, but work with staff, sword, and knife, and other things. But the average person just can't do that. They have too many things. And obviously, what I found was people had to feel something positive happening, something powerful, positive happening quickly if they were going to keep up with it. So one of the research groups I was working with, for example, in Toronto, the head psychiatrist said to me, you really need to bring these ancient practices together in a way that people can do them in a short time. And fortunately, I was globalized from an early age and then learned different traditions from around the world. And so wanted to take the best. And we found that combining things from different cultures kind of had the best effect in the shortest time. And so it's really been quite a journey. And working with my wife, who's also a psychiatrist, we've done now quite a few studies, some open series, some controlled, some weightless controls. And we really feel we've tuned it to a great degree. And the training that we've developed is for anybody of any background, of any culture, no religion, any religion, because I really feel that it gets to the foundation of how our nervous system works. And what's amazing is several different laboratories have been studying what we're calling coherent breathing. One research group in Italy led by Dr. Luciano Bernardi, who's a cardiologist who studies high altitude adaptation and breathing in different medical conditions. He began to have people in their laboratory do breathing of all rhythms, and they measured what happened in every system they could measure in and discovered doing about 20 minutes for many hours afterward, even if you're not doing the breathing, every system they could measure worked better. Around that same time, a group in New Jersey led by Paul Lehrer, who is a psychologist, was discovering the same thing. And he got interested in it after he went to Japan in the early 90s, and with Japanese researchers studied monks. And some were advanced. They'd been meditating hours a day for 20 or more years. And other ones had different range of practice in the monasteries. And they found that the advanced monks immediately began doing coherent breathing when they started meditating. They'd never been trained in it. It took years of meditation for their bodies to intuitively sink into it without realizing what they were doing. And my feeling is, I just haven't found most people in the world want to take 20 years to meditate for 8 or more hours a day to get the breathing, which really, it turns out, when you do it, your mind, your body, your spirit is so much better. After we developed this program, which was also similar to how my Aikido master taught us with movement, breathing, and meditation, my wife found an article in an Indian physiology journal about an ancient practice that was described 3,000 years ago in a yoga text. They had studied in a modern experiment. They took a small number of beginners and they measured all kinds of parameters before they started the training. And then they did a 30-minute daily practice where they'd start with gentle, strong, but relaxed yoga movement for a few minutes. Then they would do the yoga movement coordinated with the breathing. And then they would purely go into the breathing. And it was like coherent breathing. And then they would do the kind of meditation that we do, which in many styles of yoga and Tibetan Buddhism is considered the most advanced or one of the most advanced, which you ordinarily would not teach beginners. But if you do the breathing first, your brain works better and you could do advanced meditations pretty quickly. And what they showed was at the end of a month, these people who were total beginners, the things they could measure about their nervous system suggested that they looked like people who'd been practicing advanced yoga for many years, which once again gets to the fact that the breath is so immediately transformational. So in the old days, you'd spend maybe 10 or 15 years doing slow breathing. Then you might spend a couple of years doing fast breathing. Then you would come to this breathing. And my feeling is you'll learn this breathing first. You can then, if you want to, go and learn slow breathing and fast breathing. But you may not need to because it's doing so many things for you. And then there are other modifications that came up in our work that were discovered in different cultures. So in many ways, how I teach coherent breathing is very close to a system, a breathing that was developed by Russian Orthodox monks, we think about 1,000 years ago, and is used in a Russian martial art that is a lot like Aikido and taught to Russian special forces. And many Russian Olympic athletes also learn it. And you not only learn coherent breathing, but you learn a practice that appears in a very simple form in India, and then is more developed in Tibet and China, and then I feel most developed in Russia, where you move the breath. That's what it feels like. It feels like you're moving the breath with your awareness around your body. So it's a number of skills put together. You first have to learn coherent breathing, which is a skill in itself, because my feeling is our minds are so addicted to stress and resistance and aggression and trying to survive in this difficult world that it's very hard to relax into the breathing, which is important. And people have to get that skill first. And they may want to use ocean breath, or in India called ujjayi breathing, but it's taught in China, it's taught in other cultures. And then you learn to move the breath, kind of with your imagination and your attention, taking it to different circuits in your body. And it overlaps some with Chinese practices, but it's quite different, very simple. And I feel it gets the deepest stress release. And whether it's a warrior or a civilian who's been subjected to some single large trauma or repeated over years traumatic events, it allows a much deeper level of stress release to happen. And it's been very special for my wife, Dr. Gerbark, and I to introduce thousands of people around the world to the breathing, to teach teachers in different cultures who then themselves can teach hundreds of people or sometimes thousands of people. The other thing that was critical in my thinking about all this was after 9/11 happened, and I was in New York City when 9/11 happened, and seeing what was going on and how people were affected for days, weeks, months, and years. We think at this point, there are 400,000 people around the New York area still suffering from physical and emotional effects of 9/11. But what it indicated to me was the one healer, one client model doesn't work anymore. We've reached a mass of people on earth where often when bad things happen, it affects many people at once. And we don't have enough therapists. And the other thing is so many children are affected by what's happening in our world. There's a lot of evidence that children are extremely distressed. So part of our goals were to bring it to large groups of people. And what we found, because teachers I was training with, whether it was the guru from India or masters from China or Japan or other countries, often worked with very large groups. It might be 20,000 people, 100,000 people. Now, the largest group, single group I've worked with at a time is 400 people. But what was interesting is a lot of teachers are most comfortable working with 8 or 10 people because you can monitor them all relatively closely. And once you graduate to a bigger group, you can't do that. But there's a healing power from the group in itself. So even when we're together with this kind of podcast or program, there's a group effect happening. We're all beginning to synchronize what's happening with the rhythms in our being. And that is so critical to what's happening because a lot of our work is also related to the scientific work of Dr. Stephen Porges and other co-workers with him called Polyvagal theory. So part of that theory is that we either feel safe or not safe. And the amazing thing is the breathing could put you in the space of being safe no matter what's happening. So when we train in Aikido, for example, you train to be attacked by 4 or 6 people at a time. And very advanced masters may be attacked by 20 or more people with weapons at a time. And a lot of this is recorded on tape. And so what's amazing is when you're relaxed and meditating and breathing properly, everything just flows. Whether you're in a quiet situation and just want to enjoy the flow in your life, or even if you're in a very dangerous kind of situation. So I also found, teaching thousands of people, is that as people practice over time, it's like you wash away old stress. And as that old junk gets released, your system begins to work in a better and better way, and it changes your relationship with your inner self and with other people so that you relate in a different way, and you begin to have a connection to people, yourself, and the environment. And you often are more caring for yourself, for other people. One of our many studies done with collaborators, Samir Mansour, who started NoLimitGen.org, set up an asylum for Rohingya children who escaped Myanmar to Bangladesh, so terribly traumatized children. And they found as the children started to learn the breathing, they got happier. So then they realized that the caretakers were often extremely stressed themselves. So they did programs for the caretakers along with the children at the same time. And then they surveyed them afterward for what the changes were. And what the caretakers said was, I realized that I wasn't very nice to the children. And I became much better at listening to them and meeting their needs and taking care of them and caring for them. And the children said, we found we could really deal with our anger, because children and adults with PTSD, often the thing not talked about, because people talk about flashbacks and depression and stuff and nightmares and sleep problems, people are often really angry. And it comes out in so many maladaptive ways. And the children said, we realized not only did we feel better, but the people taking care of us felt so much better and became so much nicer to us. And we need to become nicer to each other and the world, the environment at the same time, or we're going to destroy ourselves and the world. So, it takes one mind, one body, spirit complex at a time. But we also feel that there's evidence suggesting that if you bring some tools to help children make their system work better and deal with negative emotions, by the time they're 10, 11, 12, that mental health and other problems that begin to really blossom in the 20s can be, in many cases, averted. Not everybody, but giving people tools to get rid of negative emotions and relate better just makes a huge difference. So that's one way of, talking about a lot of things. We've done a lot of great studies, but I'm sure you have some questions too.
Yeah, let's jump in. I'm thinking, oh crikey, where do I unpack some of that? Because there's so much great information you've just given us. And guys and gals that are watching, please pop your questions in. I can see a few comments in there. So any questions you've got for Dr. Brown, this is the time. We're live. It's Sunday evening, so get those questions in. Yeah, so a couple of bits then that come to mind. So the mechanics alone then of coherence breathing, by the sounds of it, isn't the complete picture. And going back to something you said a few minutes ago, then there's this thing around, you can't just do it once and expect immediate. I'm paraphrasing you here, obviously. So it takes some time to embed. So what else is going on? So the mechanics happen. How many sessions or how much time would it take for a typical person to start to feel some benefits? Do they feel things straight away and it builds?
Right. Well, the majority of people, if they relax the first time they do current breathing, and usually when I introduce people for the first time, we only do it about 8 or 10 minutes because it's so alien. Your system is in such a different zone. It's uncomfortable for people. We are addicted to stress. We're addicted to overstimulation and having desires and wanting to gratify those desires instead of feeling peaceful and content. Or, the other thing I say to people is if you've ever played an instrument or a sport where you no longer felt like you were doing it, it was just happening and you were being played in a sense. That's what I'm talking about. It's like the thing I found with martial arts is that's one of the wonderful things. You get to the point where it's all just flowing in this amazing way. And I've been there a little bit with playing an instrument when I was young. But for the average person, those activities may require too much time and training and, or you don't have a good instructor. And so how to help you do something that can take you into that place more or less most of the time is really critical to change our world now because we're so stressed together and we need an antidote for that. And breathing is the simplest way because most people, between about 5 to 8 minutes of doing coherent breathing, you can measure huge changes in their brain waves, in the blood flow in their brain and their heart beginning to synchronize together. Usually your brain and heart are not together, okay? And it's amazing the things that happen. And you can display some of them on a screen, a computer screen with measurements. So, but it's kind of like people may not realize what's happening at first. So the first time they do it, they're often like, I don't know what happened there. And then the second time they do it, they're like, oh, okay, this is getting like really interesting. And I remember I had a couple, and children learn this much faster than adults do. But I remember I had a course of therapists, and a lot of them were in their late 60s and 70s and into their 80s. And there was a couple, and the wife was a psychiatrist, and she had brought her husband along to do the breathing. And they weren't sure anything was happening in the course. And our typical course is about 12 hours. These days on Zoom, we spread it out over 3 or 4 days. And but she went home, and then she emailed us a week later. She said, my husband and I have been doing the breathing together this week since we left, 20 minutes a day. And we went to a ballroom dance class that we started a few months ago. And we went this week, and the instructor said, oh my God, what have you all been doing? You're dancing totally differently, and you're dancing so much better together. And they said, well, there's nothing we've been doing. And then they thought, and they said, well, actually, we've been doing this kind of breathing, and we weren't sure anything was happening. He said, oh my God, keep doing that breathing. This will help you so much with your dancing. And of course, it wasn't just with the dancing, it was meshing together and kind of synchronizing. So my feeling is what research is going to show us, what they discovered in ancient China and India, is our systems have different rhythms, but there is a core rhythm which is obscured to our everyday mind because of the chatter of our everyday mind. Because usually our mind is not totally present. It's either thinking about, okay, is this person or circumstance I'm in gonna cause me pain, or is it going to make me feel good? And what do I have to do in the future to make sure I take care of me and other people I care about? And that means your mind is wasting a lot of energy and not really, really present. And people most like doing things that bring them in the present, whether it's gardening or hiking or some kind of sport or being loving and nurturing people or things. So, that's the thing, is how can you do that much more of the time? I would say the first time people do it, that first 10 minutes, some of them aren't sure, some of them know something's happening. We can measure stuff happening, but it can take a while to get used to it. But I'd say typically after about 6 weeks, people have changed in many ways. Depends if they have a serious medical condition. In some of our studies, it may take 6 months. the change is happening and it's gradual and you're washing away old stress. But I'd say a lot like biofeedback, experts find that it takes about 3 to 9 months. And it's the same with the breathing. It's not as simple as taking a pill. What I say to people is, I'm giving you spinach. I'm not giving you Twinkies and yodels with chocolate. Uh, you do have to work at it.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, isn't it? Because we often in society look for these silver bullets that are going to have an immediate change, and so I think it's really important up front for you to say that, because it's like, let's stick at this, let's try it, but don't be disheartened if the first time you haven't got to Disneyland or the place you thought you were going to get to. So that expectation setting is really important. I think you've pretty much covered this, but if you don't mind, again, the word coherence or coherent, how would you best summarize that part of the coherent breathing? Is it the synchronization? Is there something more?
Well, it's interesting because Luciano Bernardi, the cardiologist in Milan, Italy, who studied this in Sherpas and climbers and all kinds of people, he calls it resonant breathing.
Right.
And they're both accurate. So remember, if you looked at people's brain waves who've never practiced meditation, breathing, or yoga, or Qigong, or whatever, when you look at those brain waves, they are totally chaotic and incoherent. And usually, if you do that kind of recording, you might have a 19-lead portable EEG, or you might, if you're really fancy in a laboratory, have 128 leads on, but 19 is pretty good. And what you see is each of those 19 leads is coherent, incoherent, chaotic, and within itself, within each area of your brain, it's very chaotic. And then looking at them in the total array, you see they don't have anything to do with each other. And when you start doing this breathing, so for the person of average height, it's about 5 or 6 seconds in, 5 or 6 seconds out. Suddenly there's a coherence within each area of the brain. So it almost begins to look like a sine wave instead of just jagged little squiggles, okay? And then what Bernardi is referring to is, if you look at the whole array of all 19 leads, the coherence in each one begins to line up with the ones across the whole cortex of the brain. And that's what you see in people who've been practicing movement, breathing, and meditation for many years. But the fact is if you do it a certain way, it doesn't take years. It takes about a month.
That's so exciting. And by the way, everybody, we are going to experience this. So in a short while, Dr. Brown is going to take us through some of this. So if you're just joining us, you haven't missed any breath work yet. It is coming. Has there been any studies of animals, and what, do they have chaotic brain activities, and or do they tend to be more smooth than us?
Right. Good question. What it is, I'm not a maven on animal brain waves because their brains are quite different than ours in many ways. But I would say they're more incoherent like us, but they're often more present. So you have more coherence compared to us. So it's a little bit in between. It depends on where you're going. Like, it's hard to compare the brain activity of a rat, for example, to a monkey or a chimp and a human being. What is interesting, though, is, for example, cats purr. And that's a form of what scientists call resistance breathing that enhances these changes. And rats have it too. What I think happens is we actually have it as babies. The animals do too. When they grow up, they continue to do it purposely. Like, say, if you're a rat, if a higher ranking rat beats you up and you're trying to figure out, am I going to fight again or am I going to run away? You will do your breathing to recharge in that time and get your system in the best shape possible. Okay. Human beings have to learn these things, most of us. And it's obviously, it makes sense that you got to do some practice. So it doesn't take long to get better and better at it. And it really changes people's lives. So it changed my life. And, things that make you feel good and that you see change your life, you want to share those things with other people too. It's just natural, whether it's good food or good knowledge or good skills. And that's one thing about this. What I find often with Westerners is they think of this as, oh, I'm going to have this concept of breathing, and then I can do it whenever I want it without practicing. No, it's a little bit like if you're a concert pianist, no matter how good you are, you're going to do scales every day.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I love teaching military is they're used to practicing skills and getting really good. And they don't ask, why do I have to practice this? They practice and they get good, and they get good fast. Yeah. Because these techniques were crucial to warriors over thousands of years to survive. And they weren't generally shared. What my feeling is, we need to really help each other and help the earth. And this is, I think, a very valuable tool. Is it everybody's cup of tea? No, that's okay. It's most people. And it's also the easiest thing you can do to bring yourself into a coherent state of resonance.
Very cool. And have you seen anything to do with singing and wind instruments? I'm just curious about those.
Absolutely. So, and other kinds of instruments too. So, different religious singing in ancient languages, typically people were breathing in the coherent breathing rhythm. So Dr. Luciano Bernardi published an article on that, in fact. And I was just with Dr. Porges, with his wife, Sue Carter, and my wife, Dr. Patricia Gerbarg, a couple of days ago, last week. And he was saying he was actually a very good clarinet player when he was younger. And he realized it taught him a lot about breathing and breath control and the effect it had on his nervous system. For quite a few years, I've worked with 9/11 responders. I was asked to work with different groups of 9/11 responders. And about a little over 2.5 years ago, I did a public program at what's called the Calling of the Names ceremony, which is very emotional. It's where the names are called of those who died, taking care of what happened at 9/11. And so families come, co-workers come from police, firemen, FBI, Secret Service, whatever, Marines who came to help. And so I was able to lead the whole group in the chapel instead of just separate groups in different places where we train people. And it always starts with Irish bagpipes and ends with Irish bagpipes. And the bagpiper came up to me at the end and he said, "Thank you so much for leading that breathing, because that's how I have to breathe when I play the bagpipes. And you relaxed me so much. My playing was even better." And I thought, oh my God, I didn't even know that you had to breathe in that rhythm to do the bagpipes right.
Yeah. Wow. And is there something to do with prayer as well? I remember reading somewhere about counting of the rosary beads, I think, and that was to a count.
Right. Well, that was Bernardi's work, that when you chant the Latin Hail Mary, you're breathing in coherent breath rhythm.
Wow.
And a lot of the ancient chants in other languages were also sung in coherent breathing. And you could say, in a sense, 3 to 6 breaths per minute is the coherent rhythm. So some songs are slower, going down to 3 or 4 breaths per minute, and some are more like 5 or 6. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And why do you think we in the West are just discovering this again now? What are kind of your theories and thoughts on why it seems like it's been in the East for a while, and yet we're just awakening to it at this point?
Yeah. Well, I think the breathing was maintained in different religious traditions, and they didn't, in general, go public with it, at least in the last 1,000 or 2,000 years. Nice. I suspect over 1,000 years ago, as people were going through, let's say, routes on the Silk Route, different trade routes, from the Middle East through the Far East up through the north of Russia, when people were stuck by a snowstorm or a rainstorm or something in a yurt together or a hut together, they would say, there's this kind of breathing I do. And the other person might say, well, I have a kind of breathing I do too. Well, let me see yours and I'll see yours. And let's try them out. We'll see how they compare. I think people shared these things because they weren't so nationalistic and tribal as we've become over the last couple thousand years. And so I think for a long time, these things were not shared. And also, people who have not attained a high spiritual development feel like my way is best and
Right.
my country has the best stuff. And instead of finding out, okay, what does each country have? And my feeling is they each have special things. So what we wanted to do was bring them together. As the psychiatrist, researcher, clinician in Toronto said to me, all these rivers are coming together in North America. Canada is very multicultural, and America is multicultural too. He said, we've got to make this so everyone feels comfortable with it. And I don't think it's that hard.
Yeah. At the start, you were saying, so I think in the East that initially it would be practice slow breathing for a decade or two, and then maybe some fast breathing for a decade, and then they
Maybe
kind of,
2 or 3 years.
oh, okay, but for a period of time, and then you've kind of flipped it and said, let's
Flipped
start
it,
with the
exactly.
coherence. Why do you think they were doing it the other way? What do you think the benefits are of doing it that way?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that when people do coherent breathing the first time, it feels so alien. A lot of them don't want to keep doing it without coaching and guidance and a little encouragement. Whereas when you do slow breathing, most people, not everybody, most people feel really relaxed right away. And feeling really relaxed is good. The problem is your mind is not ready to do algebra or differential equations. And, you know, you kind of like, you'd like to be lying on the beach with a margarita. Okay. So what's great about coherent breathing, you can be in a state of optimal relaxation, but your mind is more ready to solve complex problems and you're ready to take action. And that's what you need most of your everyday life. Is it good to also know how to really, really, really deeply relax? Yes. But you need that. That's what's interesting about superb athletes. They achieve this balance of optimal tension and relaxation. So they're not wasting energy and they can do what they need to do without wasting energy on excessive tension or being too relaxed. You have to have some tension within your body to do a sport.
Oh, I love that. So yeah, it's being down the edge. And okay, so I think Dr. Brown, maybe we're ready to move into a bit of the breath work. Now, just for the audience as well, I've never done any coherent breathing, I've done box breathing, Wim Hof breathing, Soma breathing, you know, this, that, Buteyko, but never knowingly done coherence breathing. So I'm very excited myself. Now, can I do it standing? Is that okay? Or should I be
You
sitting?
could do it standing, you could do it
Okay.
sitting, you could do it lying down.
Okay.
Usually before I do coherent breathing with a large group of people, and I feel that I'm talking to a large group of people, what's really nice is to get the pace of the breathing while you're doing movement. Okay? So what I'll ask people to do, if you're sitting, you could do it standing too. We'll do a Qigong movement with the breathing. We'll do a kind called painting the waterfall, because that's very easy seeing me here. So painting the waterfall means as I breathe in, I bring my hands up like this, and I imagine feeling the backs of my hands and fingers touching the waterfall. And as I breathe out, I touch it now with my fingers and palms on the underside. So let's do it together. I'll pace you with my breath and voice. Breathing in, coming up, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, going down, 2, 3, 4. Breathing in, smooth, relaxed movement, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, going down, 2, 3, 4. Breathing in, feel the waterfall against your hands on the back as you go up and on the front as you go down. And breathing in, smooth fluid, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out. 2, 3, 4. Breath in. 2, 3, 4. Breath out. 2, 3, 4. Breath in. 2, 3, 4. Breath out. 2, 3, 4. Again. Breath in. 2, 3, 4. Breath out. 2, 3, 4. And relax. Close your eyes. Feel the sensation in your fingers and palms and your whole hands. Observe the sensations in your body. Become aware of the kind of thoughts you're having. And the qualities of your breath, however your breath wants to be without controlling it. Okay, so now I'm going to pace the breathing with my voice, just breathing. Don't worry about movement. So, often we use different pacing cues for people, and there are many out there on the market. So I'm going to use the sound of 2 bells chiming, and you can let me know if you hear it. You don't have to hear it because I can use my voice, but not if you can hear the bells. Okay. So you could be sitting, you could be standing. If possible, close your eyes. If you're only comfortable closing them partway, that's all right. Breathing out, continuous, effortless. Breathing in, continuous, effortless. Breath out through the nose, continuous. Breath in through the nose, continuous. Breath out, your belly gets smaller. Breath in, your belly gets bigger. Breath out, the belly gets smaller. Breath in, the belly gets bigger. As you breathe out now, you do not have to squeeze all the air out. It's very relaxed. Breath in, you do not have to fill all of your lungs. It's very relaxed. Breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Breath in. Notice how your body relaxes more and more with each breath out. Breath in. Feel the subtle increase in energy in your body. Breath out. Relax your eyebrows, your face, your jaw muscles. Breath in. Breath out. Now soften the muscles of your jaw, your face, around your eyes. Breath in. Breath out. Let the muscles in your throat and neck soften some. Breath in. Breath out, relaxing the arms, hands, fingers. Let them soften. Breath in. Breath out, relaxing the muscles between the ribs, between the shoulder blades. Breath in. Breath out, relaxing the muscles in the belly, lower back. Let them get softer. Breath in through the nose. Breath out through the nose. Breath in. And breath out. When your mind wanders, bring your attention back to feeling the breath moving in your nose and throat. Breathing in on this high tone. Breathing out on this low tone, relaxing your legs, your feet. It may feel like your body is getting softer and melting a bit. And if you feel like you're working really hard, just let go. Imagine a smile appears on your face as if by magic. Can you feel how that changes the quality of your breathing? Breathing in on the high tone. Breathing out on the low tone. Just let go as you breathe out now. Breath in on the high tone. Breath out on the low tone. Breath in, whatever thought, memory, image comes into awareness. Breath out, let it float by like a cloud in the sky. Feel the breath moving in your nose and throat and letting the chimes guide you. All you have to do is respond without effort. You don't need to count. Breath out, very relaxed and subtle. Breath in. And understand whatever sensation or memory or image comes into your awareness as we do this is some old stress getting washed away. You may remember where it comes from or you may not. It doesn't matter. It's like clearing out the attic or the basement of the old stuff you don't need. Breath in, very relaxed and effortless. Breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Now just imagine you're 5 years old as you continue to breathe in on this high tone and out on the low tone. So you have the imagination of a 5-year-old, which is amazing. And imagine you can move the breath around your body. And the most basic channel found around the world is from the base of the spine to the top of the head. Breath in, flowing up from the base of the spine to the top of the head, and back down as you breathe out, base of the spine, the sit bones, the pelvic bones. Breath in from the base of the spine to the top of the head. Breath out, back down to the base of the spine. Breath in, just imagine you feel like a wave of water washing up inside you. And back down again when you breathe out. Breath in and up to the top of the head. Breath out and down to the base of the spine. So it might feel like a beautiful wave of water washing up and down, like the waves on the shore of the beach, going back into the ocean. Or it might feel like a beautiful breeze, rustling the leaves on the trees in the forest, refreshing the air on a beautiful day. Breath in, up to the top of the head. Breath out, down to the base of the spine. Breath out, letting go more and more with each breath. Whatever memory, sensation, image comes into mind, just let it float by. It's all part of the stress release. Breathing out now on the slow tone. In on the high tone, in and up to the top of the head. Out and down to the base of the spine. Breath in, top of the head. Breath out, base of the spine. And we know thousands of years ago, in some cultures, they use their mind's eye, almost like you're looking inside your body, directing the flow of your attention and the breath with your eyes up and down inside you. But feel the breath primarily. As you breathe in, there is a wave that moves up inside in your spinal fluid. Breath in up to the top of the head. Breath out and down to the base of the spine, and the pressure wave flows down when you breathe out. You're just aligning yourself with this natural rhythm and aligning your whole being with a crucial oscillator in your brainstem that determines your blood pressure waves in your arteries. Top of the head, base of the spine. Now let go of moving the breath, breathing in on this high tone, aware of the breath moving in your nose and throat. Breath out on the low tone. Breath in. Breath out. Notice the more you let go and feel a stillness deep inside, down to your very bone marrow, easier it all gets. And I'm going to gradually fade out the bells. And just let your breathing be in whatever rhythm it wants to be in, with whatever qualities it just has. Can you feel the qualities of your breath without your mind changing it? Just letting it be, however it wants to be. And as we practice longer, imagine you can become the breath. Can you imagine the breath coming into your body, however slowly and gently, and filling every cell of your body with energy, which it does? But can you now imagine, as the breath gently, slowly leaves your body, that your body is filled with empty space, like a flute or a pot or an empty cup? First filled with the energy of the breath, and then filled with empty space. Stay with that experience a little longer. And can you imagine the infinity of the universe in every direction around you? Can you really feel that space that extends around us in this amazing universe to infinity, beyond the stars? And then gradually, gently, when you're ready, you can stretch your arms and legs like a cat awakening from a nap. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And people may have a lot of questions.
That was lovely. That was really, really nice. That was a really nice gift. And I feel completely different from, I don't know how long that was. Was that 10 minutes that we just did?
It's a little, some seconds over 10 minutes, but
Yeah.
that's exactly
Thank you.
right.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. That was lovely. I really enjoyed the waterfall piece.
Yes.
That was so effective. I was like, oh, I can really visualize that the water just touching really nicely. And I can picture the waterfall. So I guess that was like a nice grounding exercise to start getting you into the moment. Thank you, guys. Let's just have a quick look, see if there's any questions so far. Let's have a look.
Or experiences, if people want to share what they
or
felt during the
experiences.
breathing and right after.
Somebody said that this is amazing. Coherent breathing helped me a lot with work performance anxiety, but I do it every time before performance. Okay. If I train breathing for many months, will I stay calm automatically, or do I always need to do the breathing 15 minutes before performance?
Good question. So I've worked with a lot of world-class musicians and have a friend who trains a lot of them. And she found once she did the breathing, she could tell how different she was. And my wife wrote about this in her book called The Healing Power of the Breath. What it says, I recommend everybody, including me, I still do the breathing every day for at least 20 minutes, or sometimes 15 minutes when I'm really rushed. And it just really tunes you up for the whole day. It lasts about 24 hours. I definitely recommend it doing every day. However, you'll notice that you go to higher and higher levels and you get used to functioning at a higher and higher level. So as you keep practicing, you get better and better. And, it can be wonderful to learn more advanced meditation after doing after the breathing, for example, or other movement practices. What I'd say is what you experience if you keep doing it regularly and you get stressed, your body begins to do the breathing. You find your lungs are doing the breathing and you're like, I didn't tell you to do the breathing, but you're doing the breathing. And it kind of develops a body awareness of what it needs. So when you're out of balance and off center, your body brings you back just doing the breathing. It's funny, a little over a year ago, we were doing our third program with some Marine and some health professionals, including coaches for helping people recover from injury. And one of the coaches, by the third day of our training, he came in and he said, I was stuck in this horrible traffic jam. This is in California. I was stuck in this horrible traffic jam and I started to get so upset. And then I realized my lungs just took over and did the breathing. I thought, wow, that's a new record, 3 days, and he's got it. For me, it took months. And you know what it is? I don't consider myself talented at this stuff. I just learned from doing martial arts how to practice. And if you practice, you'll get it. It will come.
Yeah. For the start, for me personally, I was trying to get used to the rhythm, and I think I was filling up my lungs too much. And then,
Yes.
it's for me personally, it's quite easy to have a slow breath out, but I really struggled with 5 seconds in because I was getting to the top of my lung capacity. And then I can't remember at which bit it was, maybe about halfway through, I was suddenly able just to relax. And my breathing became very quiet. I wasn't having to put any resistance on it anymore. And it was really easy to go up to the 5 seconds and not be at full lung capacity and then back down again. So that was fantastic.
Exactly. And it's really wonderful when you practice. when you feel that you've become the breath.
Mm.
That's the best way I can put it. Or sometimes how other people describe it as like you're riding waves of breath through space.
Very cool. No, very. I love that. I loved it when you were talking about the space bit at the end. Couple of bits. And Angela Green has said, "Thank you, Dr. Brown. Absolutely amazing." And Kaylee Arthurs has put, "Are there nerves on the bronchioles that send messages to the heart-aligned mind?"
Okay, so there are 3 different special receptors in the alveoli, the little sacs where the oxygen and carbon dioxide is exchanged in the lungs. And we believe that part of what's happening with the breathing is, depending on how you're breathing, different messages go from those different receptors up to the brain and shift how your brain is working. And they begin to signal the heart. And actually, what's also interesting that I didn't talk about is that at this rhythm of breathing, you deliver more oxygen to the cells than any other rhythm, and it's the least work compared to any other rhythm of breathing. So it's
That's
like,
cool.
that's what I was taught in martial arts is maximum results with minimum of effort.
Yeah.
You're not using more than you need, just enough to get the best results.
Yes.
And we often think the harder we try, the better result we get. No, you can counteract it. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. That yeah, I think I listen to a lot of Tim Ferriss, and he talks about the minimum effective dose, and it sounds like that's the
right.
Yeah, that sounds like a very efficient way of doing it. I've heard people talk about I'm thinking Joe Dispenza-esque stuff around attaching emotions to this sort of breathing, and maybe thinking of gratitude. How does that kind of fit in?
Yeah, so there's so many things that have been used. You can do this breathing with different kinds of movement and also begin to move energy through different parts of your body and movement. But you can also work different emotions. Gratitude is a common one. Love is another one. Joy is one. So you have all kinds of choices with different positive emotions. Now, you can also use the breath to dissolve negative emotions or pain. So once people have learned the basic breathing, we can move on to use breathing with the awareness of space to dissolve severe physical and emotional pain as well. So there's so many variations. Different cultures have taken these healing tools in. Yeah.
Very cool. And do you recommend, people watching this now, can they do this before bed? Is it to do in the morning? Is there a good or bad time to do this sort of breathing?
Right. So we talk about a lot of these issues in the book, The Healing Power of the Breath. What it says, it's really nice doing it first thing in the morning. And in the morning, it feels really good to move the breath. It's like washing your face and your whole system is ready for action. At night, it can be really great to make you go to sleep. Most people, if they do it right before bedtime, they'll go to sleep much more easily. Rarely, some people with a lot of stress will start feeling like they're getting too much energy. And what we recommend is doing one bell chime in and 2 bell chimes out.
Right.
That when you prolong the exhale, and that also slows the breathing down, that is more relaxing. And you don't have to solve differential equations before you go to sleep. So, it depends. I find the drawback of doing it before sleep is often you're asleep in 2 minutes and then you don't get your whole practice in. So, yeah, I have a lot of people who practice with us who may be working mothers. Right. And they find, they have to close the door of their office late morning and just lie down and do the breathing for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. And then they're rejuvenated and their brain's working so much better for the whole day. And also your emotions are so much smoother. Also, you're able to feel other people's feelings and recognize what they're experiencing. When we're stressed, we're not thinking about other people. But when you work in a team, as so many of us do these days, often a multidisciplinary team, you want to be able to think how other people think and feel what other people are feeling, and also interpret their facial expressions. And there's research done by a group in India showing when they taught this to people who had schizophrenic symptoms, when they taught them this breathing, they got better in a lot of ways. They released a lot of oxytocin, which is a pro-social hormone, and they were able to interpret the facial expressions of other people much, much better.
So cool. Being more present, more aware of the people
Present,
around you. Yeah.
more
Not stuck
caring.
inside your own head. Yeah.
Exactly.
Bit of a technical question for you. I'm aware of some of the benefits of kind of nasal nitric oxide and humming breath, for example. So
Right.
if I wanted to do this coherent breathing, but I wanted to breathe out through the mouth to store the nasal nitric oxide and bring it back in again, would that take me away from the coherence? Would there be any point to that?
No, well, that's an interesting thing. What I'd say is different traditions do different things, but what they usually all have in common, if you're working on calming practice, okay, breathing in through the nose, and that generates the most nitric oxide.
Right.
You don't generate much nitric oxide when you breathe out.
Right.
So some cultures, but it looks like from the meager data we have that breathing in and out through the nose is more calming. When I'm teaching martial arts, we work on how to use the mouth to rev your system up, for combat. That's a different thing. Most people don't need that. But it also turns out when you're breathing at 3 to 6 breaths per minute, you generate more nitric oxide. And you generate more as you go from 6, 5, 4 to 3 breaths per minute. But it is the inhale through the nose that generates the most nitric oxide for your system.
Okay, that makes sense. So breathing out, you're not really wasting the same amount that you would be you breathing it. Right. Okay, that makes logical sense.
Right. So in other words, in Qigong and yoga and the way we teach it, it's in and out through the nose because it's very calming.
Yes.
In Japan and other cultures, often it's in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Right. I just as you mentioned Qigong, I had a lovely couple on called Bob and Fran a couple of months ago, and they're both in their 80s, and they both practice Qigong, and they're vegan and they're on YouTube, and just fantastic people. And they were talking about a double inhale breath followed by an exhale. Have you come across that? I know Andrew Huberman spoke a little bit about this.
Yeah, there's so many kinds of breathing found in Asia, hundreds of kinds. And there can be a double or triple inhale.
Right.
And then the exhale. And then sometimes you can do a double inhale and a double exhale. So it depends on what effect you're trying to achieve. But again, it's like, in general, coherent breathing will give you the greatest benefits in the shortest time with the least work.
Yeah, there you go. Fantastic. There you go, guys. That's what we need. Coco says, what does she put here? I very much appreciate the lesson. Thank you. And one more question here. Justin's put, so is this method technique based on rhythm and speed, or breath count per second, like 4 seconds equals 4 breaths?
Okay, so we were breathing at 6 seconds in and 6 seconds out. And those 2 bells were synthesized by a biofeedback Qigong yoga teacher named Stephen Elliott, and his website is coherence.com. So what we find is if you have to count, that undoes a lot of the benefits.
Right.
So what's so great about having a cue, and there are other cues people use, like a wonderful Qigong master, Robert Peng, uses the sound of an ocean wave on the shore, which some of my patients like better than anything else. And some people, if you've been through a typhoon or a hurricane on the shore, you don't want the sound of the waves. Okay. So, there are different cues to guide people that you can get on the internet. I don't recommend counting, but so you have to have the right rhythm. It turns out that at that rhythm, for the person of average height, because of the blood flow return to the chambers of your heart and the blood vessels in your lungs, that the stress response part of your autonomic system and your recharging, healing part of it balance perfectly. And they complement each other. Whereas we often act as if they're antagonistic, and we have to be ready to fight all the time. That just drains you. And you also don't see things as they are. Things that are not dangerous may look dangerous to you. On the other hand, I've found sometimes people can't see danger when it's right in front of them because their mind is clouded. So the breathing puts your mind in a space to be able to see much more clearly.
Wonderful. That's really helpful. And I think we've probably come to the end. I've kept you a bit longer than I promised to, but I think it was so worth it. So thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Where can people find you if they want to know more? I've got your website here as well, but what can they do?
Yeah, if they email us at breath-body-mind.com, and it's an educational website, so they can learn about work with children, work with the military, work with disasters, all of those things. And also, we do work with herbs from around the world that have been researched. And interestingly, one of those herbs also overlaps very much with what the breathing does to strengthen your autonomic nervous system. So what's fascinating to me is these different mechanisms are coming together and tools that we can use to make ourselves more resilient and more loving at the same time. So breath-body-mind.com. And we have teachers in many places around the world also. So what's really helpful is you have your own practice for, say, 20 minutes a day, but it's really nice once a week to be in a group with other people practicing it. So there's on our website, there's listings of different teachers around the world and when they lead practice sessions online and that kind of thing, because there's something amazing about being in a group together. You got to do your own practice, but when you're in the group, what people say is it feels so much more powerful. And, you know, we would love more research to be done on and understanding that. And things are shifting in that direction, but it's going to be some years. And I figure in the meantime, you might as well do what people have been doing for thousands of years around the world, because they usually got together in groups to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. I love that, because you're right. Because sometimes doing it by yourself is great, but I've been involved in groups of people and there's nothing quite like it, especially when you're all together and you can hear the breathing going on and it just gives you that extra something. So, okay. So your details are below. So if you're watching this, you can go into the description and the website's there. And then from there, you can get to everything else. Dr. Brown, is there anything we haven't covered? Any last bits you wanted to leave us with?
Breath is the first thing we do in life and the last thing we do. And we just take it for granted. And it's a tool that can really change your life and transform things. And we need it more than ever, you know, and we need to be, my feeling is as a species, we're on a journey together. Yes. And we need to really concentrate on a positive shift.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. That was a beautiful way to end it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the lovely gift of taking us through that exercise. Thank you everybody for watching. Beautiful comments in there below. If you've enjoyed this and you think there's somebody else that could benefit from hearing this message or practicing that breathing exercise, then feel free to share this with somebody else out there as well. And please do sure to check out Dr. Brown's website. Dr. Brown, I would love to have you back at some point in the future. Maybe we can get your wife involved as well. That'd be wonderful. And until then, thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day. And guys, we'll see you on the next Breathcast. Remember, we've got over 150 videos here dedicated to different breathing exercises, so you can go and play with some different breathing exercises. But now I think definitely for me personally, coherent breathing is going to be one of those go-to in my toolkit. So thank you.
And you can do it almost anywhere, anytime.
Look at that. And it's free as well. Isn't that the wonderful thing?
It's free, totally.
It's free. Wonderful.
Great.
Right.
Thanks so much for having me. We'll look forward to coming back with you.
Very welcome.